This morning, Sheff G, the man widely considered to be the leader of Brooklyn's drill rap music scene, is in handcuffs along with more than 30 other alleged gang members.
New footage of Sheff G being beaten in jail has gone viral, sparking outrage and questions about his treatment behind bars. The clip is raw, intense, and the internet can't stop talking about it. In this video, I'll break down everything. Allegations of prison abuse. Sheff G's accusations against Marcy Correctional Facility are deeply alarming and raise serious questions about the conditions inside. According to his own public statements, he was forcibly removed from the general population and transferred to what he describes as a handicapped dorm, a section ostensibly reserved for inmates with significant medical or mobility needs. He claims this move is unjustified, asserting he has no such qualifying condition, and suggests the reassignment may be punitive or even retaliatory, tied to his identity as a prominent rapper.
Gangland godfather.
All right, today, Brooklyn rapper Sheff G turned himself in for a 5-year prison sentence, and only our Lisa Evers talked to him while he was walking into court.
He further alleges that prison staff stripped him of his personal belongings, leaving him vulnerable and disoriented. The most chilling part of his story, however, involves being handcuffed and left outside in freezing temperatures for 2 hours, with no explanation, no warning, and no apparent justification. These claims, if true, point to a disregard for basic human rights, particularly the right to humane treatment. But Sheff doesn't stop there. He paints a horrifying picture of life inside that handicapped dorm. He says that some inmates are in such poor physical or mental health that they can no longer control their bowels, defecating in beds or even showers. Others, he claims, urinate into bottles, filling them and then dumping the contents into communal sinks while being told to brush their teeth and wash their faces. This, he insists, is not just degrading. It's a fundamental breakdown of the facility's capacity to care for its most vulnerable residents. These are not casual complaints. By broadcasting these allegations on social media and urging fans to call the facility directly, Sheff is treating this as a public crusade. He's mobilizing his audience to demand accountability, framing his struggle as part of a broader battle for dignity behind bars. The weight of his platform means the facility can't dismiss his claims as simply another rapper whining. This could become a turning point in how prison conditions are scrutinized by both the public and the authorities. Conditions at Marcy Correctional Facility. Underneath Sheff G's personal grievances lies a deeper, systemic story about Marcy Correctional Facility, one that has been flagged by outside advocates and legal organizations for years. Conditions at Marcy have long posed a challenge. Critics argue that the institution's infrastructure is stretched thin, particularly in its medical and mental health units. According to court documents submitted by prisoner rights groups, certain units remain locked down for most of the day, with inmates confined to small, unsanitary cells and limited access to meaningful out-of-cell time. A federal judge recently intervened, ordering significant reforms in Marcy's residential mental health unit, RMHU. The court mandated that individuals in that unit must receive a minimum of 7 hours of out-of-cell time daily, including structured therapy or group activities. This ruling suggests the court found credible evidence that the status quo was causing harm, that many residents were living in conditions so restrictive and dehumanizing they could be considered segregated rather than therapeutic. Against this backdrop, Sheff's claims of being placed into a handicapped dorm gain even more significance. He argues he's being shuffled into a space designed for medically vulnerable or disabled inmates, yet he doesn't appear to meet that profile. If true, this not only undermines the stated purpose of the dorm, but also suggests a misuse of medical housing as a disciplinary or isolating tool. Reports of unsanitary conditions in that dorm, patients defecating in beds, urinating in bottles, and using communal sinks in a degraded environment, hint at a facility that may be failing its duty to care. If Marcy truly is housing people in a way that violates basic standards of hygiene and dignity, the abuses Sheff describes could be symptoms of institutional neglect or even systemic disregard for the well-being of those inside. Use of his celebrity to raise awareness, accountability. What makes Sheff G's prison saga especially potent is how he's leveraging his public profile, not just to shed light on his own suffering, but to rally collective action. By broadcasting his grievances on Instagram, he turns what could be dismissed as private complaints into a public call to arms. He explicitly encourages fans and outsiders to call Marcy Correctional Facility, plastering the institution's phone number on his stories and demanding that people demand better for him and others.
but didn't do it. You niggas sound stupid. On me, take it easy. I know my resume is ruthless. Hey, get your tooth hit, telling all them lies. You niggas funny on the internet, you niggas plies. The devil tried to break me, but I thrive. The ops tried to take me, but I survived. And now all my bitches look like dimes.
This tactic is strategic. As a well-known rapper, Sheff wields influence. His voice prompts attention, his injustices resonate widely, and his fans become a grassroots pressure group. He isn't just seeking legal recourse, he's demanding public accountability. With supporters calling the prison directly, he forces the institution into the spotlight, making it more difficult for officials to ignore or downplay his claims. This isn't just self-preservation. For Sheff, the struggle over his treatment is entwined with his identity and legacy. He frames his fight not merely as protecting himself, but as exposing a system that may mistreat inmates, particularly high-profile ones, with impunity. The narrative he constructs is powerful. He's not using his celebrity to evade punishment, but to expose potential abuse and demand respect for his human rights. At the same time, there's risk. His public approach could provoke retaliation or be dismissed as virtue signaling by critics who claim he's exploiting his fame. But Sheff seems ready for that fight. By turning his incarceration into a broadcasted struggle, he transforms passivity into resistance and imprisonment into a platform for reform. Legal and human rights implications. Sheff G's allegations of mistreatment, being moved arbitrarily, stripped, cuffed for hours in the cold, and exposed to degrading living conditions, are not just dramatic headlines. They carry real legal weight. If verified, these claims could form the basis for a civil rights lawsuit, potentially under laws that protect inmates from cruel and unusual punishment. The fact that he's publicly naming the facility and urging external intervention increases the stakes, putting Marcy Correctional Facility under a brighter spotlight.
Being locked up and being away from your family, being away from getting money, being away from everything, you just sit and you think about better shit to do when you come home. You're gonna move smarter, you're gonna do better things.
From a legal standpoint, there's a clear route. Section 1983 lawsuits against state actors. Prisoners have long used this constitutional provision to hold correctional officers accountable when their rights are violated. Sheff's consistent public documentation could bolster his case, creating a factual record that supports legal action. His statements, if corroborated, might not only secure justice for himself, but also open the door to broader reforms. Moreover, his fight intersects with ongoing legal pressure on Marcy. Advocacy groups have already sued prison officials over the conditions of the residential mental health unit, accusing the facility of keeping inmates in oppressive, segregated environments. A judge has ordered major reforms. If Sheff's experience reflects a larger pattern, where medical or handicap housing is misused, his case could amplify calls for systemic change, tying his personal story to established legal challenges. On a human rights level, there's moral urgency. He's alleging a fundamental failure to treat incarcerated individuals with dignity. If his claims gain credibility, they could attract the attention of prison reform organizations, human rights nonprofits, and even public officials. The activism he's kicking off has the potential to lead to external investigations, policy changes, or closer oversight. In short, Sheff G's battle isn't just about his sentence, it's potentially a human rights test for Marcy Correctional Facility. He's laying the groundwork for accountability, and if his claims lead to legal consequences, they could resonate far beyond his own confinement. Impact on his music. Legacy. Sheff G's incarceration marks a turning point, not just for his personal journey, but for his artistic identity. As he begins serving his 5-year sentence, the question emerges: how will this chapter in his life reframe his legacy? Historically, incarceration has fueled powerful creativity for many artists. The absence of freedom often sharpens perspective. For Sheff, this prison bid could become a crucible, shaping his future work into something more introspective, mature, and socially conscious.
Fox 5 exclusive. Platinum drill rapper Sheff G talks about how music changed his life and his upcoming prison sentence.
All right, he chose to open up to only one reporter, Fox 5's Lisa Evers, who has the interview you won't see anywhere else.
Already, his public calls for accountability from inside prison cast him not just as a rapper paying dues, but as a figure with a cause. If he uses these experiences in his music, specifically the alleged abuse, systemic neglect, and his fight for dignity, it could deepen his narrative. Fans could come to see him not only as an emblem of street grit and drill authenticity, but as someone pushing back against institutional brutality. That could resonate more broadly, positioning him in a tradition of artists who critique systems from within. But there's also risk. Some may view his outspoken activism as a bid for sympathy, or argue that he's using his celebrity to escape scrutiny rather than atone. His legacy could be questioned. Is he a reformer or someone leveraging suffering for clout? How he frames his time behind bars, whether through art, interviews, or social media, will be critical in shaping public perception. There's also a practical dimension. His music career may face disruption. 5 years in prison plus 5 years of supervised release isn't a small gap. The industry evolves fast, and maintaining relevance from behind bars is difficult. But if he emerges and tells this story well, he could rewrite how people view him. Not as a rapper who fell into gang life, but as someone who confronted that life, endured, and came out demanding change. In that way, his legacy may be defined not by violence, but by resilience and reckoning. The plea deal and sentence. Sheff G's 5-year prison sentence didn't come after a full trial. It came through a plea deal, a calculus that has sparked controversy and deep speculation. Prosecutors originally sought a 20-year term, but Sheff accepted an offer of just 5 years behind bars plus 5 years of supervised release. That gap between what was sought and what he received raises critical questions. Was this deal too lenient? Or was it a pragmatic choice by someone who weighed the risks and decided to minimize his exposure?
He pleaded guilty, yes, but despite the seriousness of the charges, he'll only have to serve 5 years in prison.
Lawyers close to the case argue the deal made sense. Sheff G was not accused of actually pulling the trigger in any of the shootings. Instead, prosecutors framed him as a financial and organizational linchpin of gang activity, someone who used his fame and money to reward violence. According to authorities, he allegedly drove shooters to crime scenes, coordinated attacks, and lavishly compensated participants with money and jewelry. Yet without first-hand gunfire on his record, the risk of a much steeper sentence may have pushed him to plead. From an investigative standpoint, the plea deal exposes the complexities of prosecuting gang-linked celebrities. The state gets a guaranteed conviction, the defendant avoids the unpredictability of a trial, and both sides save resources. But for the public, it invites scrutiny. Does someone with Sheff's profile truly pay a high enough price for the gravity of the alleged role he played? Is 5 years sufficient justice for coordination of multiple shootings and conspiracy? Furthermore, the sentence's structure raises strategic questions about his future. With post-release supervision built in, Sheff will remain under the system's watch long after he's free. That could restrict his ability to rebuild his life and career. But it also gives him the opportunity to tell his side. If he channels his energy into advocacy, art, or reform, he could use his supervised release as a platform. On the flip side, critics may argue that the deal lets him walk away too lightly, leaving the deeper wounds of violence unaddressed. Gang conspiracy background. Peeling back the layers of Sheff G's legal case uncovers a tangled web of gang conspiracy, power, and accountability. His guilty plea stems from a sweeping 140-count indictment that names him as one of 32 alleged members of the 8 Trey Crips and their affiliate, the 9 Ways Gang. Prosecutors allege a coordinated network of violence, multiple shootings, stolen cars used in attacks, weapons possession, and more. According to the Brooklyn DA's office, Sheff was not just a passive participant. He allegedly played an active leadership role.
And now I walk the streets, bro. Let me tell you, it used to be different. I walked the streets before. I used to be on guard all the time. Now I walk the streets, I don't really care because I know it's fans be in the cars, niggas winding out tinted windows. I don't get like anxious, nothing, because it be fans. You feel me? So everything changed in like a month from the same time when I got booked. So I had to just adjust to it, feel me?
Central to the state's narrative is how he reportedly leveraged his music money. The prosecution argues he used his financial success to incentivize violence, distributing cash and expensive jewelry to key players in the gang in return for executing violent acts. In at least one incident, Sheff is said to have coordinated 3 shooters, driven them to the scene, and acted as a getaway driver. The case also paints a chilling picture of celebration and reward. Prosecutors say that Sheff G hosted a lavish dinner at a Manhattan steakhouse, not for business or music, but to reward his associates for a deadly shooting. This kind of coordination and symbolism speaks to something deeper than simply competing street crews. It shows a deliberate intertwining of art, money, and real-world violence. From an investigative viewpoint, this background raises several critical issues. It challenges the often romanticized narrative of drill rappers expressing street reality. Here, prosecutors argue, the fame and fortune weren't just reflections of that life, they were fueling it. Secondly, it asks whether the justice system is effectively holding high-profile figures to account, or if celebrity status complicates enforcement. Finally, it forces a reckoning. Can someone be both an artist and a gang conspirator? And if so, how does the law and public perceive the difference? In many ways, Sheff G's plea doesn't close the chapter, it reopens one, forcing the public to confront uncomfortable truths about how music, money, and street power intersect. Before you go, remember, the story behind Sheff G's treatment in jail is far from fully exposed. The footage, the conditions, the unanswered questions, it's all part of a larger situation the public hasn't seen in full. If you want to know what happens next, the investigations, the legal fallout, and the truths that could shake the system, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The next reveal could change everything.